Hello there, and first and foremost, shout out to my sibling, Lo. What's up? Glad to hear you're swole. It's Monday the 25th of May, 2026, 4:27 p.m., and I'm walking to the end of my driveway, my parents' driveway. Shout out to my parents. And I kind of felt like, well, I don't know, I can't help myself but to say that I really feel like I've got nothing to say. But again, being in the practice of doing it anyway, despite that caveat, is kind of the point. So I'm out here and, it's not quite 4:30, so a little bit early in terms of like having a beer, And I was like, well, I'd like to, if I'm going to record, I'd like to give myself some kind of a treat for that. And as I was thinking about it, it occurred to me that one way I could make it worth my while would be that I could walk up and down this driveway and take one sip every time I get back to the top, You got to gamify life sometimes so that, I don't know, I'll drink slower. That's usually not easy for me. I drink things quickly. It doesn't have to be beer, it can be water or coffee or any of those kinds of things. Now, the question is, where's a good place to put this beer while I walk? Oh, that seems good. There's like a bunch of like earwig bugs, if you're familiar. They're pretty gross, and they're all over this mailbox, or at least in close proximity to it. And so I prefer them not to get any of this beer, if I can help it. And so, let's tear into a Coastal Daydream, West Coast IPA, Terrapin. Take a little sip. That is pretty tasty. I do prefer like West Coast style, I guess, IPAs. It's funny, in my memory, I'm really no beer snob or like aficionado. But in my memory, early on in the day of the IPA craze, which honestly was ignited for myself by Hopsecutioner, the first time I ever had it, I was like, this tastes like when I used to get Claritin stuck in my throat as a kid because I wasn't good at swallowing pills, but it has alcohol in it. So, for whatever reason, that extreme bitterness, I was just like, this is awesome. This is like, you could almost call this medicinal, And so, yeah, I've always enjoyed IPAs that are extremely bitter. Like, I don't know, Hopsecutioner doesn't really taste bitter in the same way that other IPAs have kind of come to basically establish what that means to me. But in general, it seems like the West Coast stuff and maybe New England stuff is a little bit more old-fashioned. I think that, and again, just speaking for me personally, but mixing things like guava and like passion fruit and like these sweeter profiles into the actual bitterness, like I don't like that, and that's fair, but there's no accounting for taste, and everyone's taste is valid. But to me, like, I really like grapefruit, right? But one of the things I like about it is that it's bitter, I guess. Well, actually, this is a bad example. I was thinking of, like, when I first ever had a grapefruit, I was in middle school, and there was a kid named Reiner. Shout out to Reiner. Pretty easy name to remember. Unique, if nothing else. And he let me try some of his grapefruit, and he would dip it in sugar, which at the time I thought was like the tastiest thing in the world because it was like bitter, but then the bitterness was cut with sweetness, So it tasted really good. So I feel like I'm kind of talking myself out of what I was trying to say. But experientially, when it comes to like sweeter IPAs, I would just as soon not have that, I guess I want to make a timer start so I can figure out how long these laps are. I was thinking if I could make this beer last 20 minutes, that'd be kind of amazing. And also, it would really push me into that 5 o'clock territory. I kind of doubt, given how short this little walk is to the bottom of my driveway, that I could really account for 30 minutes of ambulation in order to get to 5 o'clock. But hey, with your help, perhaps I can. So anyway, yeah, IPAs, grapefruits, all that stuff, dude. I guess I just got off of a bike ride. It's been raining a lot here recently, which is good. As everyone always says, we need the rain. So we have certainly gotten it. In the past handful of days since I returned from Florida, Upwards of like probably 3 or 4 inches by now, I would imagine. We have a little hydrometer, I don't know. We have a rain gauge that we can figure out how much rain has actually fallen, looking at, So we've emptied it out a couple of times, and I've certainly seen quite a few inches in there, my dude. But in any case, yeah, I just went for a small 8-mile ride because 8 miles is far better than 0. And I thought I saw a weather window, which does seem to have been the case. Didn't get wet at all, and I got to stretch my legs a little bit, oxygenate my brain a little bit, and prepare for making this clip a little bit. You know what I'm saying? All right, so since I started making that timer, it's been 2 minutes. I feel like I'm going to end up drinking this beer really quickly, but it has to be a little bit slower than like if I was just sitting in a chair, which is what I look forward for the next one. Let's have a sip. All right, if nothing else, this has to help the quality of the content, which was another hope of mine. I was like, yeah, usually like drinking a beer, I guess at a certain point it all just kind of hits me. It's not a very subtle ramp up because of how quickly I drink, But doing this little enforced task will change the delivery. So, on my bike ride, I was certainly feeling a lot of like, I would guess I would describe it as pressure. It's like a familiar feeling of being under pressure. Like today, I did a lot of logistics for my near future, I went ahead and reserved a U-Haul truck, which I think is going to be hilariously empty, even after I put every single thing that I own in it. I think it'll probably occupy like half of the 10-foot cargo area. And I've joked before on this podcast that I think my entire life could fit in a 6x6 cube, and so I'll actually get to determine if that's true. Obviously, I don't want to stack things too much because it'll fall over, but perhaps I'll be able to, I guess I could figure out, well, it must be less than that. I don't know, it doesn't matter, we'll see. So I did that, and I also bought a return ticket from Hartsfield-Jackson Airport. I'm going to go over my plans again, just because I enjoy thinking about it, because it's just so seamless, and I love how, I was able to figure out this whole plan and not have to inconvenience anyone else at all, and the fact that, I don't know, I always enjoyed when I would, make a big plan-altering choice, when I decided to stop biking cross-country in Arizona. I really enjoyed, I enjoyed figuring out how I would get home without having to inconvenience anyone and without flying. For me, in general, flying is never a very serious option that I consider. I personally don't like flying. I don't like being in airports, and I certainly don't like being in the sky. But when it comes to figuring out how to traverse vast distances with rapidity, I enjoy figuring out how to do that. And so for this journey to Atlanta, it will begin on May 31st, where and when I will go and retrieve the U-Haul, and then I'll spend that evening or afternoon packing it up. And then on the first thing in the morning, I probably will have breakfast. I'm going to go into a granular fantasy just because I enjoy it. I'm really looking forward to listening to podcasts while I pack. A lot of people who I have helped move in the past claimed that they really didn't enjoy doing so, and I've actually always enjoyed moving because it's such a needful. It's hard to get more core into what the needfuls are than moving, because it's you have to get all of your stuff out of a place. You probably have to clean that place a little bit. There has to be a finality with your relationship to that place. So it's you have to go through all the rooms, which boy, oh boy, do I love going through all the rooms. Cleaning things, organizing things, purging things. It's something, I guess I do sort of a pseudo move, maybe twice a year, if not a real one once a year, another sip, and that took about 4 minutes to get that out and back. I really should be Stravaing this, but whatever. Well, actually, I should do it. Why not? Okay. All right. So I love moving. So I'm looking forward to the whole process. So I guess I'll wake up early, maybe 7 o'clock, have a quick breakfast, do all of those kinds of things, jump in the U-Haul, drive 2 hours south to Atlanta. I'm assuming I'll probably get there, 10 or 11 o'clock or so. And then I will have about 5-ish hours to unpack everything and then return the U-Haul. And then I will need to walk from the U-Haul return place to the closest MARTA station, which I think might be, what is it called? Edgewood Shopping Center, maybe? I'm not sure. I suppose I could take my bike. Ooh, no, I don't think so, because that would, I don't know if I can bring that on the Georgia shuttle. Probably could, but I don't think that's necessary. Plus, that would, I think that would, I'm trying to plan this so that I have plenty of time between the steps, but I don't want to have too much time where I'm just kind of twiddling my thumbs, The shuttle I'm aiming for leaves at 4:30, and so I would love it if if I started to get just a little nervous at 3:45 as to whether or not I would be there on time or not, to the shuttle pickup point at Hartsfield-Jackson. So in any case, I'll play with all that and just hope for the best. I mean, I'm not too concerned because it's nice when there are escape routes, and with the Georgia shuttle at least, I think I can just call them and change the time to the next shuttle, which would be 6:30. If it turns out that I'm too early or too late, or I wouldn't be because of early, but if I'm too late, I can adjust all of that. And then I'll take the shuttle back here, which will take, close to 3 hours. And then I would arrive back at my parents' house at about 7:30 or so. And it's actually going to be my dad's birthday that day, June 1st. Shout out to my dad. And so it just seems like a nice way to end my, what would you call this? What is that word? It's not apprenticeship. What is that thing? My residency. So in my residency on my dad's birthday. And then on the 2nd, I would drive back to Atlanta. And the 2nd would be my first day in my new apartment. I don't know if I mentioned that, but I've put in a deposit down. It's kind of funny, actually. It's the exact same apartment in the exact same complex of apartments that I was living in before leaving for the bike ride. So, boy, talk about a certain kind of nostalgia, So it's going to be interesting to see what it's like to be right back in that exact same environment. When I was talking to my landlord, there was another unit within the complex that I was kind of interested in, just because it would be different, but kind of amazingly and surprisingly, at least to myself, it was rented between the last time I spoke with him and when I reached out to him on Sunday, which I guess was yesterday, or Saturday, whatever it was. And so, anyway, my Atlanta life is coming into real, resolve. I can see the things that are moving the pieces, and I have done all of the things that I need to do in order to set up myself to be in Atlanta again. I am a little bit happy because this hill gets a little harder every time. What are we at? 10 minutes. Good deal. What was I saying? It was related to all that other stuff, but I got distracted because I felt slightly winded. I mean, this hill's actually not that bad, but talking and going up a hill that's I don't know. At its steepest, it's maybe 6%. I'm not sure. But anyway, what? Yeah, I don't know. I felt pressure on my bike ride because I am moving on and hoping for the best. Oh, I guess that's another thing about Monday. Maybe that's what I was going to say. Or actually, rather, Tuesday, I think it is, the 2nd. So on the 2nd, there's actually an event. I don't know how useful this service is going to end up being for me, meetup.com. I've never used it before. I don't even know if I necessarily knew that it existed prior to me kind of stumbling upon it somewhat recently when I was still thinking about moving to San Francisco. But, they post events that are of various types that you can basically attend for free, or I guess probably a small fee associated. But there's one on the 2nd of June that's at 6 p.m. And I think that should give me plenty of time to set up my space so that I'm not just sleeping in a weird orientation within the room with stuff everywhere. I can actually set my life up in a way where I'm okay, I feel like I live here a little bit. It's not just that I threw everything out of a van and then put it in the first room I could find. But they'll be discussing a paper that was somewhat recently released. And I think that's the point of the group, which is kind of cool. I wonder, I think I have made a note of it that was, recursive language models presented by Jordan Hinkle, which is up in the Buckhead area, I guess. So I'll have a bike ride to look forward to. I'll have an interesting event in something that I'm actually very interested in hearing, in a professional context that isn't strictly listening to a YouTube video. And then, I don't know, I just got things to do. I really am going to try my best to be social. I want my return to Atlanta to be primarily focused on relationships, and I know this is where expectations, I want to make sure that I kind of try to rein those in as much as possible so that I'm not, I don't know. I want to set myself up for success, but I also know that there's a part of my essential nature that needs to and wants to retreat. But I don't think that this is a time to indulge that, as long as I'm not leading myself to any kind of burnout. I really want to talk to people, one of the things I did, I guess it was today, was also go through all of my contacts. I have 181 contacts, I think, throughout the course of the years. And so I went through all of them, and some of them are from the Appalachian Trail, some of them are from when I lived in Montana, some of them are from when I lived in Asheville, some of them are from other times and other places, and I whittled it down to 50 people who live in Atlanta that I could, set something up with, catch up, have a beer, whatever it might be. And I really want to do that in addition to the job search itself. I can't tell you, that recent, not the most recent, but I guess last week's episode of the Huberman Lab podcast about social anxiety, I would highly recommend anyone who feels, if you're ever catching yourself in an introspective moment, maybe about your own degree of socialization and perhaps anxiety about it, I highly recommend listening to that. It's great because I feel much more so than when I used to listen to Joe Rogan, which, respectfully, Joe Rogan has a lot of diverse interests, and so I'm not always interested in hearing from hunters or fighters or who else does he have? Politicians or people who are in the political sphere of influence, commentators, whatever. I'm kind of particular, and I like that Huberman, he kind of sticks in a very specific lane where it's all about physical improvement and mental improvement, whether that's your intellect or your emotions, and I just feel there's so many gems that I hear on the average episode of Huberman. And so this social anxiety episode, which again, highly recommend, it really kind of touched, it pulled a chord. Is that struck a chord? It struck a chord with me, just because I'm man, this is pretty much exactly what I need to be hearing right now, because I have a lot of faith and confidence, and I even think about these themes in the way that the guest is presenting them most of the time. But as I've learned in my life, the times when the tools are the most necessary are usually the times when they're most difficultly, it's the times where it's most difficult to retrieve and use them, because it's like, oh wow, this is actually, this isn't just like aimless wondering. This is like a real life situation that requires a certain type of awareness of myself and control over myself. Like it's a literal test, you know? And that testing element, like I really liked how the guest talked about basically approaching yourself scientifically. And much like Paul Conti talks about in other episodes of the Huberman Lab podcast, like you can do little experiments with yourself. And I've done them, you know, like it doesn't hurt when I'm in the context of hiking a trail or biking cross country, because I already feel out of my element. And it's like, well, what's there to lose? Like if I'm particularly nice to this McDonald's cashier, like I'm going to be gone and probably never see them again in like 30 minutes, you know? And so part of the guest, I should probably just see what his name was so I can stop calling him the guy. What was his name? Excuse me, sir. What's your name? Dr. Nick Epley. So Dr. Nick, you know, he champions doing these little tests in your own life, and data shows, you know, for what it's worth, arguments from authority being what they are, that, you know, basically we forecast a lot more friction and failure on our like assumptions of how people will react to us than typically are the case. There was one specific anecdote which kind of inspired me a little bit as well. But Dr. Nick was talking about some other guy who had decided that he would like try to basically be rejected every single day for 100 days, you know? Let's have another sip. This is working. 18 minutes. This might be the longest lasting beer I've ever had. So, there was a guy, and for 100 days, he was going to ask people for things, like physical things, favors. He was going to anticipate rejection for everything that he asked, basically. And some of the things that he asked was like, if he could sit in the cockpit of a plane, and they said that he couldn't, but that he could get on the intercom and address all of the people on the flight if he wanted to. And then there was another similar thing where he went to like Costco and he asked the manager if he could do that same thing, and the manager said yes. Just things like that, like things that would be like scary to do for the average person, you know, just because you don't know what the rejection is going to be like. And then also, if people are telling you no to the thing you're asking for, that means you didn't get that thing either. So twofold. And yeah, I'm trying to approach the next stage of my life with like those little kinds of experiments that I can do to get myself out of establishing a comfort zone that requires too much time alone, you know? Like, worst case scenario I can picture, which this definitely will not happen, but, you know, it's sort of how I'm establishing the ground rules of what I'm trying to do. It's like, you know, if I basically just hung around my apartment every single day for the majority of the time, or went for like really long bike rides for no reason, which is certainly more likely, I certainly am prone to that one. But, you know, that's worst case scenario. And I already feel very confident that that won't be the case because I'm very aware of what my goals are. And it's not like I'm a complete and total introvert who can't step foot outside. So I've defined failure. And so defining success, especially for this incremental way that I want to do things, it's like the thing that I want to do is to have at least one social thing every single day. I think one is achievable. You know, there's a little bit of a impulse to like double book myself, you know, maybe set the baseline to 2, but I think one every single day, like a concerted effort to achieve it too. Like I'm about to be sending probably, I don't know, of the 50 people, I probably will contact 30. and then keep 20 in the wings for additional socializing. I mean, sending out 50 texts to set up 50 meetings, that already exceeds like the boundaries of what I'm thinking I'll even be able to accomplish within the first month. Like, I wouldn't put it past me. Like, if I can meet with 2 people on a single day, I don't have a job yet, so I would definitely be willing to do it, but I don't want to set myself up with that as the floor of my expectations. You know, as a cyclist, I have spent a lot of time when I was younger obsessed with metrics, you know. I guess this also was part of the work that I was doing. You know, I was always measured by how quickly I could complete something and how many things I could complete, you know. But with like Strava, if you're familiar, the social media app for athletes, which tracks your distance, all of the athletic stuff you do indoors and out, you know, you get like a weekly report. And at a certain point in my life, I certainly was using that as like a baseline of what I needed to do, quote unquote. Oh, another sip. Having that as what I needed to do, rather than biking as I wanted to do, which is a pretty critical distinction there, you know. And so, yeah, that ties in because I just want to make sure I don't get too obsessed with the metric. It's like there's meaning and there's metrics, you know, and I'm really pursuing meaning, you know, but I'm using metrics to get there, but I don't want the metrics to like guide me too much, because again, I can get lost in that kind of sauce. So again, that's what I'm saying. It's like awareness, you know. I'm also a big fan, as I've mentioned, of Dr. Alok Kanogia, Dr. K online. And you know, he said it was not a profound thing to say, but the way that it hit me felt very profound, which is that awareness is the most important part of getting better, you know. And better is quoted, and there's also an asterisk next to it, because better is sort of an arbitrary distinction, you know. Like, better in this context really just means like more aware, and there's a part of me that wants to say more in control, but not in control. Again, like, I feel like these themes are like beating a dead horse, but you know, you can't control how you feel or how things occur outside of yourself, but you can control your reaction to those things. And again, I've tried to look in my own life experience and kind of like geotag those moments where I feel certain things that I don't think I should feel in the way that I initially viscerally feel them. It's kind of interesting. I'm a bit conflicted, because like one of my biggest things is that I feel like you should try your best, and this is difficult to do. You should try your best not to make your problems other people's problems, you know? Like, and to me, the way I interpret that is that, like, basically, you know, it's basically, instead of controlling how you react to the way that you feel, like you use another person to kind of mediate your feelings, and you're not really, you're dependent on another person to process your emotions, right? Which is not, at least for me conceptually, the best way to do it, because then not only does that mean that you might be like out of luck if there's no one around, maybe that's where people start to have like really negative self-talk and stuff, but also that means you can bum someone else out because you don't have a better way of dealing with the way that you feel. But then I was listening to this thing last night that Dr. Kanogia was doing, and he was talking about how we need other human beings to process our emotions through. And so to me, I think there's probably still, I don't think that was like a binary statement where it was like, in order to process emotions, you must have people to do so with. But I think there's like I don't know, there's maybe a masterful way of like using people to process your emotion that doesn't burden them with the struggle or the toil or the the heaviness. Like, I don't know, it's like you do want to share those things, but you don't want to like infect someone else, or at least I don't want to infect someone else, So it's kind of an interesting thing, and it's something I've been thinking about on my bike ride. I did have the thought about like ex-girlfriends that I've had. Sometimes, maybe a lot of the time, at least in the more recent years, I have wanted probably to see them. I usually, when I'm dating someone, I'm happy to see them almost any time, almost all of the time, but I can certainly recall myself like giving even my girlfriends an out, like I probably, I don't know, I would feel a little nervous about asking to hang out with my own girlfriend, because like I wouldn't want to be disappointed by getting my hopes up and being vulnerable and asking for them to hang out if they didn't want to. So I would kind of default to just like letting them tell me when they wanted to hang out, and then usually it was always a yes, And thankfully, especially in the beginning of relationships, there's that special energy that's being shared by the people, hopefully, where you actually want to see that person probably as often as you can. But yeah, it was just interesting because I was thinking again with the writing of my previous girlfriend, Joanna, about me, and the keywords that stick out in my mind in her description of me, with like a robotic interiority, a human voyeur, and someone who enjoys completing tasks with the joy of a working dog. I think she phrased it better than that, but I'm just like, well, the opposite of being robotic is vulnerability. And it is interesting because I think in order to actually have a meaningful shared relationship with someone else, you have to exchange vulnerabilities. And it feels a little ugly to be vulnerable. And I just mean ugly, like unattractive, like, I don't know. I feel like I'm getting self-conscious. It's like I would rather accept someone else's vulnerability than have to worry about whether or not they'll accept mine. I don't think that there's anything particularly wrong with me, but I feel like I've spent a lot of my time, and I could be wrong about this. I'm sure there's a handful of people just coming to mind who would be like, dude, you're not like that, trust me. But I feel like I've spent a lot of my time thinking about how to be a kind person, by and large, when dealing with others. And so I don't think that that's a very common pursuit necessarily, because, people have other interests. I think self-improvement has just always been something I've been generally interested in, whether it was through philosophy or, studying psychology. I've just really enjoyed thinking about myself and trying to feel better internally and make other people who are around me and who are interacting with me feel better, like externally in general. And so I don't know, it's probably a product of like, maybe I wouldn't say too much introspection, because I don't think that saying too much is it's not a meaningful qualifier for introspection, because it's just like, well, too much compared to what? Like, it's another thing about Dr. Kanogia, is that he talks a lot about how things aren't really a problem unless you think that they are. And I really don't think that my type of introspection is a problem at all, but it does make me more thoughtful than not. And I'm not even saying that like it's a necessarily benevolent type of thoughtfulness. It's just like I spend a lot of time in thought, for good or for ill, my dude. And so yeah, that's my life, I guess. I'm just rambling, and I'm walking up and down this hill. How many miles have I went? Shout out to my dad. Opening all kinds of ads. We don't want those. Wow, I've walked a mile. That's crazy. 1.12. And honestly, a little bit more than that. But yeah, is there anything else? I mean, as per usual, I've already said more than I thought I would. It's amazing. It's like, and this maybe explains, is a good bookend for the episode. This probably explains why I feel like I have nothing to say sometimes. Because I feel like that seems to me that it is a product of basically a long, quote unquote, long period of time between making clips. And, I basically had over a week of not making any in between trail days and going to Florida. Shout out to my dude Travis, shout out to my dad's side of the family, shout out to Cynthia Lynn and Steven. It sort of feels like the first day, on any given day, I can probably make a clip as long as I just start the recorder and then talk. But as time starts to kind of pile up, the definition of what I would talk about seems to get muddy. That's kind of what it feels like. Like when I say I don't have anything to say, what it feels like is like that there's no crispness. Like the layers that I'm about to peel back within my own thoughts, they seem from a distance cloudy, murky, and undefined. And I'm just like, man, I almost don't even know how to approach this. I mean, unfortunately, I know that the first thing I need to do is acknowledge the state of the thing, which is that I don't know if I have anything to say. But as soon as I start talking, obviously, 35 minutes can elapse without much pain or difficulty. And obviously, it's not like I'm curing cancer or anything with the stuff that I'm putting out there. So it's not that big of a deal whether I do it or don't do it, but I would prefer to do it. And so I need to continue to do it. And I need to do it regardless of whether or not I feel like I have anything to say. Ironically, I guess, if I'm true to my word and actually just think about it, which is to say, every single time I've ever said I don't think I have anything to say, I always do, in a funny way. If I think about it logically, the fact that I say I have nothing to say means that I actually do. I've been making podcasts for like 16 years, I have things to say, and I know how to. And so here I am doing it, and I'm excited to sort of be done with the day. It's supposed to rain hard over the next couple hours, and man, I'll tell you, there is no greater treat than falling asleep to the sound of rain. Like, you take a shower, you get all cozy in your bed, maybe open a window a little bit, crack it, you know what I'm saying? Put on a podcast. Ideally, the sound of the rain will be louder than the podcast itself. But if it's a tried and true, loved podcast, you don't really need to hear the words. It's more about the rhythm and the cadence. That's the lullaby, like, element of the whole thing. It's sing-songy, If you listen to spoken word enough and you actually memorize certain parts of it, what you're really keying in on has very little to do with the words themselves. It becomes musical. Wow. This beer lasted like 35 minutes. It's a good way to do it. I don't always like drinking beer. I'm pretty strict. It's like, I don't like to drink alcohol at all before 5 p.m. But that was a good way to kind of have my cake and eat it too. Another thing I want to do is get strong again, like upper body style. I was not like super buff or anything when I was living in Atlanta, but I was certainly buffer than I've ever been in my life, upper body wise. And I've started to do a couple of the exercises that I used to do, which is fun, using a pull-up bar and dumbbells, and I can feel it in my body. And I'll tell you, there's just something very satisfying about walking around and just being like slightly sore all the time. Like, it just feels like, it just makes me feel strong. Like the proprioception of knowing that my muscles are like, I don't know, have recently been taxed or whatever. I like walking around and feeling that. So that's another part of the whole equation, my dude. But I'm walking back and it's looking like it's gonna start sprinkling here soon. And so, 1.35 miles. Nice. So for now, shout out to my parents, love you, bye.